June 14th, 2015, Springfield, Missouri. Police entered a quiet home after disturbing Facebook posts raised alarm among friends and neighbours. Inside, they found a mother dead in her bed. Her daughter, believed to be a wheelchair user, was missing. Her chair abandoned at the scene. Panic spread through the community as police started the search for the missing daughter, with neighbours fearing the worst. But when investigators located the girl, the truth unravelled into something far darker than anyone imagined. A web of deception, betrayal, and manipulation that shocked the world. This is the twisted case files of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, Part 1. Hello YouTube true crime community and welcome to Alkatrazzz True Crime. I'm Alkatrazzz, just someone who is interested in true crime and spends countless hours deep diving into cases. Probably more time than I should, or probably more than I should admit to. I wanted a new challenge to take this obsession and build a channel where other people have the same interest as me and we can talk about and examine cases together. Here we don't just skim the surface, we dive into the darkness. This isn't just storytelling, it's reckoning, giving the victims their dues. This video is part 1 of a multi-part series on a case that has haunted me for years. The murder of Claudine or DeeDee Blanchard. It's a case overflowing with information, media coverage and controversy. With so much noise, it's difficult to see the case as it happened. My goal is to cut through the confusion and lay out the events in a clear chronological order. In the first episode, we'll focus solely on DeeDee herself and her life before motherhood. Were there warning signs of what was to come? What's fact? What's misinformation? And what's the uncomfortable truth? And why does this matter? DeeDee was the victim of a brutal murder. She was found stabbed 17 times in her own bed.
What we thought initially may be a victim turns out to be a suspect. Things are not always as they appear.
What police uncovered shocked the world. Her daughter, Gypsy Rose, had plotted the murder with her online boyfriend Nicholas Godejohn, and the pair then fled to Wisconsin to Nick's family home and were arrested just 24 hours after DeeDee's body was found. Nicholas received life without parole for the crime. Gypsy, however, the mastermind, took a plea deal and pled guilty to second-degree murder for 10 years in prison. She served only 8 and then was able to walk free in December 2023. And since then, she's become a media phenomenon. Reality shows, books, millions of followers, a divorce, and a child. Now, I'm sure if you're new to the case or haven't really heard about the case, which I would be surprised if you're watching this video, but if you just heard that, you might be thinking that doesn't sound fair. And you'd be right, that's a sentiment a lot of us who are very interested in the case feel. It's just not fair. The reason for the sentencing discrepancy lies in the story spun by Gypsy's defence team. Her attorney, Mike Stanfield, presented a narrative of long-term medical abuse, claiming Gypsy was a victim of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Gypsy, as I mentioned in the teaser, was a wheelchair user and the community believed she had a countless list of illnesses. But when arrested, it was found that she could walk, and her defence team actually claimed Gypsy was perfectly healthy. DeeDee was then vilified as a monster and Gypsy her victim. The media made countless stories and the public was sold the idea Gypsy had no other choice but to kill her mother to escape her own torment.
DeeDee's death has uncovered an alleged pattern of financial fraud, one that may have included charities in Kansas City.
A twisted tale of one of the most sadistic and cruel cases of barbaric torture and child abuse, neglect, and systemic breakdown ever imaginable.
Gypsy was raised by a seemingly doting single mum, who was in fact a monster.
She was particularly manipulative and convincing.
Justice is supposed to mean fairness, impartiality, and equity. In Missouri, secondary murder carries 10 to 30 years or life with parole. Gypsy's plea deal gave her the minimum. Prosecutor Dan Patterson secured life without parole for Nicholas, who was charged with first-degree murder, which satisfied the public's outrage at the heinousness of the crime without dismantling Gypsy's abuse victim narrative. To the system, it was neat and tidy. But who fought for DeeDee? Who spoke for the mother who was ambushed in her sleep, stabbed repeatedly, then demonised in the media by one of her own killer's claims? With the plea deal, the full truth never came out. The silence, though, didn't last. Armchair detectives and content creators began digging deeper, some even submitting FOIA requests, uncovering pieces of evidence that contradicted the official narrative. Slowly, a movement started to build, and content creators have been attempting to get the real truth out there. This is why it matters. DeeDee Blanchard didn't get a day in court. No one fought for her justice in the legal system. But we can fight for her memory by piecing together the truth, correcting the record, and ensuring her story is told with fairness. So this is going to be part 1. Like I said, there is already so much information out there. I am simply going to be collecting it and examining it and really putting it in a chronological order in different parts and going through it in a sensible way. So this is part 1, DeeDee before motherhood, the good, the bad, and the ugly. On May 3rd, 1967, Claude and Emma Petrie welcomed their 6th and final child, Claudine Blanchard, later known as DeeDee. Her siblings were Claudia, Dorla, Laura, Evangelina, and Claude Jr. The age gap between the siblings is not well documented, but from family accounts it's described that DeeDee is much younger than the rest. Documentaries hinted that DeeDee was a good 5 to 10 years younger than the rest of the siblings. The baby of the family. The family lived in the small Cajun town of Shack Bay, Louisiana, and the Petries lived in a region defined by its wetlands and bayous close to the Gulf of Mexico, steeped in Cajun culture. Not long after, the family moved further south to Golden Meadow, which is still within the Lafourche Parish region of Louisiana. Golden Meadow was a small town, its name said to come from the yellow flowers that grew everywhere. Details about her parents' occupations are scarce, though reports suggest that her father Claude may have worked as a ship's captain. The family were not described as wealthy, but not described as destitute either. Most people in Golden Meadow were described as working class and living modestly, and it wasn't unusual for households to struggle somewhat financially, especially in the 70s and 80s. From the beginning, DeeDee's siblings noticed she was treated differently. Emma, her mother, seemed to favour her above the others. DeeDee was allowed to enter beauty pageants, while her siblings were not. She slept in her parents' bed, had elaborate birthday parties, and was even gifted a car and college tuition at the time. So when we look at this, it may have been that the family generally had more resource to give to DeeDee if she was much younger than the rest. And I'm just thinking, if she was a good 5 to 10 years younger, she would have been the last child to go to college, she would have been the last child to get a car. Generally, the other children would have been out the house by this point, so Claude and Laura may have had some extra pennies to put towards this. Does this make it fair for the other siblings who had to buy their own stuff and struggle? No. But is it DeeDee's fault? Also no. But we do also have reports from her siblings that DeeDee just had a way of managing her parents like the others didn't. She had ways of getting around them and manipulating them, as we'll kind of go into some of these stories. But I will just say, because I do want to keep this balanced and I don't just want to rush to DeeDee's defense, we are going to go into these stories and there could be some truth in them. But I think when you're growing up and you see your sibling getting favourable treatment, or you don't see something as fair that your parents are doing, I'm sure a lot of us has had experience like that. And, you know, resentment can build against a sibling, but at the end of the day, it might have been something completely out of their control, as in Claude and Laura just had more pennies to give to DeeDee at this time. I guess we won't know. So from an early age, it's reported that DeeDee had a heart murmur, and heart murmurs can be harmless in many people, and there is no clear evidence of if DeeDee did actually have this condition. It's reported by her family, so I guess we have to assume that she most likely did, but there is no clear evidence of how severe DeeDee's condition was or what symptoms she presented with. But it's believed that she was kind of treated differently from a young age and almost wrapped in cotton wool by her mother, Emma. She would be shielded from her responsibilities the others had to then shoulder. This is kind of used, and it's been suggested that Emma actually had Munchausen's by proxy syndrome, and this is where DeeDee learned it from. But if she did have a heart murmur, no matter if she had no symptoms and it was mild, and, you know, DeeDee could have just lived a normal life, not wrapped in cotton wool, I can imagine to a mother that hearing heart murmur, you're going to be extra careful with that child. I don't necessarily think it's any evidence to suggest Munchausen syndrome by proxy. But because of this, she was excused from chores and often pulled out of school, with Emma explaining it was because of the heart murmur. Her sisters recalled that Emma ran a strict household. Every Saturday, the children were required to remove all the knickknacks from the shelves, scrub them clean, and replace them exactly as they had been. If anything was out of place, Emma would scatter flour across the room, forcing them to start over. And while her siblings worked, DeeDee often lounged on the sofa and watched television. Despite this strictness, the other siblings described their childhood, though, generally as happy and spoke well of their parents. But there were shadows. Claude was said to have a wandering eye, and Emma herself was accused of shoplifting, stealing clothes from laundromats, and even taking thousands of dollars from her father-in-law. As DeeDee grew older, her reputation among family members soured, and even her friends noticed troubling behaviour. In high school, DeeDee had two close companions, Suzette and Titiana. They called themselves the Three Musketeers, but even they recalled DeeDee as a mean girl, obsessed with celebrities and prone to fabricating stories. One of her most elaborate lies involved the rock band Night Ranger. DeeDee claimed she was actually in a relationship with the lead singer Jackie Blades, showing her friends letters and photos as proof. But in reality, these weren't fan interactions. DeeDee was resourceful. She knew where tour buses would park, which door the bands would exit, and how to position herself to meet them. She collected autographs and photos, framing them as evidence of personal connections. But Suzette had actually taken a picture of DeeDee and Jackie Blades one night, and months down the line, she had gone into DeeDee's bedroom where that picture was up on the wall, and DeeDee was telling her, like, oh yeah, this is my boyfriend, my secret boyfriend, Jackie Blades, and kind of giving a whole elaborate backstory of when this picture was taken, how the pair met. And Suzette was kind of just sitting there like, yeah, I took that picture. None of this is true. These stories, these fabrications became a pattern. DeeDee was not just a fan. She wanted to be seen as someone important, someone with connections, and someone special. And when reality didn't give her that, she created it herself. By the time DeeDee was in her mid-teens, her friends remembered her as someone who always got her way, no matter what it took, even if it meant lying to people who she considered her friend. and she struggled with relationships, often turning small disagreement into full-blown betrayals. One story stands out where DeeDee and her two close friends planned to attend a concert with another girl named Heidi. After the show, the group wanted to go out, but Heidi's grandmother advised her not to, saying it wasn't safe. Heidi listened, and DeeDee took this as a personal betrayal, and she began trying to push Heidi out of the group, telling the others that Heidi didn't want them to have fun and was trying to ruin their night. Then came this cruel prank on Heidi. So Heidi had a crush on a boy connected to one of the girls' families. DeeDee convinced the group to trick Heidi into believing that the boy was coming to pick her up for a date. The girls hid in the bushes outside of Heidi's house and watched as she stood waiting for someone who would never arrive. Her parents caught the girls, and when Heidi realised what happened, she never forgave them. So this is something that I do give weight to what Suzette and Titiana say, because Suzette has actually come out and dispelled some other claims about DeeDee's early life when she knew her, and has been somewhat defensive of her, where it seems like the other family members don't have that balanced view of her, which makes me wonder why. But Suzette and Titiana, I would put weight to these claims. I think they are true. So DeeDee was a teenager at this point when she did this to Heidi. Obviously, it's not nice, and we've all done things that are horrible to other people, I'm sure. And then we kind of grow and learn from that experience and think, I didn't like how I made someone feel, it made me feel bad. And generally you learn and grow as you get older, so I don't see it as like this huge red flag, but it is just something to note that she did seem to have this trait of she wanted to have things her way, and she did struggle with these interpersonal relationships. The 1980s brought a wave of satanic panic across America. Rumours of cults, sacrifices and rituals spread through towns including Lafourche Parish. Police tried to calm down fears, insisting that there was no evidence of such activity, but DeeDee and her mother Emma leaned into the hysteria. They told neighbours about animals going missing, about figures in white gowns performing rituals, and even claimed that police were covering it up. DeeDee herself reportedly became fascinated with witchcraft and the occult. She was said to cast spells and perform rituals, interests that would resurface later in her life. As the girls grew older, DeeDee's influence didn't fade. In their 20s, she convinced her friends to take part in a blood ritual, which is where they would cut their hands and mix the blood together to become blood sisters. So this to me is quite interesting, as Louisiana, especially New Orleans, is known for kind of an interest in the occult, and they have a lot of culture down there that's related to this, so I imagine that quite a lot of people from Louisiana in the Cajun culture do have these interests. However, I do find it a little bit odd how far she took it. She was like a conspiracy theorist saying that the police were covering all this up. I think this is something you would do very much like young childhood or maybe early teen years, probably not into your 20s. It seems a bit extreme, but I think we all know people who have quite a mature mind and really enjoy just being part of things and inserting themselves and spinning these elaborate stories. It could be argued that this whole thing with the satanic panic, it wasn't really anything malevolent, it was just kind of her inserting herself and spinning these elaborate stories. Or maybe she generally believed it, maybe she heard the stories, generally believed it, and then the police were coming out and saying, no, this didn't happen, and she was a bit of a conspiracy theorist maybe. Who knows? What we're really looking for is things that are malevolent, because realistically, as we go through this, we're going to hear loads of claims from her daughter Gypsy Rose. We're going to hear claims about medical child abuse and other forms of child abuse. stuff that should never happen to any child. We can look at some of these things now, and with later evidence or contradictions, we can work out what the truth most likely was. But really, the reason for doing this, as I said, DeeDee has been vilified in the media. She's been accused of really atrocious stuff, and people will use this to justify why she died. And let's face it, what she got was worse than the death penalty, because she was ambushed in her bed and stabbed 17 times. She never got a trial. She never had a jury. She just had an executioner handing down a sentence that she did not see coming. That is worse than the death penalty. So what we're trying to work out is what her crimes actually was that could ever justify that. And I think at the end of this, spoiler alert, we're going to come to the conclusion that there isn't really crimes out there that would justify this, and the crimes that you could argue justifies this are much more malevolent than what DeeDee was doing. But that's my opinion. So DeeDee worked as a nurse's aide in Louisiana, and a nurse's aide are caregivers who support nurses, helping patients with basic tasks like bathing, feeding, and checking vital signs. It's a role that requires certification but not advanced medical training. So a lot of people look to this time and say that DeeDee had loads of medical knowledge from this time. And I think nurses' aides are brilliant, and they often do have a lot of medical knowledge from experience in hospitals. But I can't see that DeeDee would have been doing this for a long career and a long period of time. As we move through, when her daughter is born, it's reported that she actually worked in a bar. So this was before Gypsy was born. She, I don't see her being able to do this for a long period of time to have really in-depth medical knowledge. And you don't have to get an advanced degree where you would be going through biology, physiology, anatomy, chemistry. You wouldn't be doing that. So I think to point to that and say, well, this is how she conned people into believing these illnesses is just a load of rubbish, in my opinion. Family members describe her reputation quite poorly. They accuse her of theft, fraud, and writing bad checks. These were general accusations with no specific incidents documented, but they painted a picture of someone manipulative and dishonest. So these stories largely come from Fancy Maselli, someone who has a lot of controversy surrounding them, and honestly so many people in this case just have controversy surrounding them. People who seem to be attracted or linked to the Blanchard clan just seem to attract controversy as well. But we will be delving into Fancy and her involvement at a later part, but basically at this point all we need to know is Fancy was delving into the case many years later and got to know the Blanchards really well. She interviewed the family and she said she heard lots of stories about DeeDee, strange and even mean sometimes, but nothing good. So she asked, "Despite all of this, do you miss your sister?" And there was a resounding yes, which confused Fancy, and she asked them, "But in all these stories I don't hear good stories. All I hear is how she was manipulative and mean and conniving. So can you share just one good story or one thing you think, I really wish she was here now so she could do that one more time with me?" And there was silence. It lasted an uncomfortable period of time and then was followed by they just loved and missed her as their sister, but really had nothing good to remember about her. At 23, DeeDee met Rod Blanchard, a 17-year-old at a bowling alley in Louisiana. Their first meeting was casual, but within weeks they were dating. Just a couple of months later, DeeDee became pregnant and the pair married soon after learning about the pregnancy. And this is where we're going to leave it for this episode. We've gone through what's out there of DeeDee's early life. Obviously, there becomes a lot more information when we get to the crime and the aftermath and the stories of Gypsy's childhood. But this is what we kind of know up until this point. And then in the next episode, we're going to be delving into Rod and DeeDee's relationship. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this episode and found it interesting. If you did, I'd really appreciate it if you gave me a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the upcoming parts, including the next episode on Rod and DeeDee Blanchard's relationship before the birth of their daughter Gypsy. Remember, this isn't just storytelling, it's reckoning for the victims. See you next time.